Thank you everyone for joining us. We're sorry we can't see you in person, so this is the closest we can get. But we're actually wanting to get your feedback. We want to hear your concerns, but we also want to give you the facts and information of exactly what you will be getting. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of talk out there, a lot of rumours, but we're going to get the facts to you. But also at the same time, we want to make sure that we try and get you the best possible outcome. This EBA has been difficult. It's been one of the most difficult EBAs to negotiate. David and Cameron have worked extremely hard. David is our Assistant Secretary and Cameron Granger, our Industrial Officer. As you probably may be aware, the policy guidelines is 2% last year in relation to wages increases across all union sectors. This year, it's actually dropped down to 1.5%. There's been a lot of policies put around the government to try and limit us in getting you what we believe is not enough money. We believe you're hard workers, you do extremely hard work, you put yourselves under risk, and you deserve a lot more. However, you don't want to hear about what I think. I think it's more important we hear what you think. So what I'm going to do is ask David Eden to give you a quick presentation on what exactly will be happening, but at the same time, I really want to hear your concerns. So please feel free to ask any clarifications. As David said, there's obviously a chat there where you can actually type in your questions, and at the end of the session, we'll take as much questions as possible. This won't be the first and last time that we will talk to you. There will be a lot more communications coming out your way as well. So over to you, David. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Thanks very much for that, Diana. Now, what I thought I'd do is take you all back to what an enterprise bargaining agreement is. Quite often, because we deal with this sort of terminology working for a union day in, day out, we sometimes use the sort of language that everyone else glazes over and doesn't understand. It's as though we're speaking a foreign language. So what I thought I might do first is just give it to you in very simple terms what enterprise bargaining is. So everyone who works in Australia has a modern award that underpins their wages and conditions. So you cannot be employed for less than what's within the modern award. And an enterprise bargaining agreement is something that sits over top of the modern award and enhances it and improves your wages and conditions. And I've got a picture of a cake there to use that as a bit of a analogy. And essentially the modern award is the cake, and your enterprise bargaining agreement is your icing, it's your candles, and it's your lollies that sit on top. It's make everything on top of the cake taste a little better. Now, when it comes to enterprise bargaining, we as a union, we engage with our members, we have conversations with them sometimes over a number of years about what affects you and what you want to improve in your employment. And we also send out surveys as well and work out exactly what you would like in your enterprise bargaining agreement. So we gather a shopping list. We're not the only one that gathers a shopping list. The employers also do that, and ultimately the government's the employer, and they engage with your bosses across Victoria, and they work out what they would like to see in your enterprise bargaining agreement as well. And what happens is that, you know, like selling a vehicle, you always put a little extra on it because, you know, if you have a customer that comes forward and wants to pay you the full asking price, then that's a bit of a bonus for you. But there's some negotiation room as well. So you might have someone turn up and want to negotiate you down a couple of $100. They walk away thinking they've got a fantastic deal. Meanwhile, you've got exactly what you've asked for or what we're wanting for your vehicle. So enterprise bargaining is similar to that, where we'll always table a shopping list or a log of claim to the employers, and they'll throw their shopping list or log of claim on the table as a counterclaim. And what happens is that the employers essentially want to strip wages, typically want to strip wage and conditions back. We want to enhance it. And through negotiations, we end up landing somewhere in between the two groups. So that's what an enterprise bargaining agreement is, and how it works, and how bargaining also works in very simple terms. Next slide. Thanks, Jose. So we had to deal with the government's wages policy this time around. It was a tough round of negotiations, bargaining in this environment where the government's saying, you know, essentially they're broke. They don't have any money outside of the government wages policy to improve employees' wages and conditions. But when we seen the government's wages policy, our eyes actually lit up, because I think out of any public sector union, our branch is probably better placed than any other to negotiate above the government's wages baseline rate of pay of 2%. So when we negotiated the wages, negotiated your enterprise fund agreement, the government wages policy was 2%. But you could access additional monies to uplift wages conditions out of Pillar 3. And Pillar 2 was where you decided that you weren't going to negotiate any new entitlements. You're just going to take a rollover deal for 12 months. So it's just a wages only at 2.5%. The health professionals, they took up that option. They took a 2.5% rollover, so they didn't have any other improvements in their agreement. Just took the 2.5% wage increase. The government was so successful in negotiating around the government's wages policy and in particular Pillar 3 that they've gone and changed their policy for future negotiations. And in fact, the health professionals are now back at the table after their 12-month rollover, and they're negotiating with a wages cap of 1.5%. So if I was a health professional right now, I'd be pretty frustrated because it's come around to bite them at the end of the day. So what was in Pillar 3? Pillar 3 was where we could demonstrate that there were some wages inequity issues between men and women in this agreement. And a good example of that is where a man and a woman might be rostered and receiving the same amount of hours and income each year, but women typically retire with less superannuation than men. So we're able to demonstrate that there's some wage inequity going on there. Also, where there have been classifications that may have been overlooked in the past. And we're able to point to a few classifications within our agreement that have fallen behind the rest of the pack, and we're able to negotiate additional wage uplifts for them. But most importantly, the government have invested very, very heavily into the TAFE system, and it hasn't been that great of an investment at the moment. It hasn't been the uptake of these TAFE courses that they thought they were going to get. And we know that most of our members under this agreement don't have any formal qualifications. So through some tweaking of the classification definitions, we could show where we were able to support the other government's main program, and that is the TAFE system, by formalising qualifications for particular classifications in this agreement. So they were the areas that we knew we could get extra uplifts through Pillar 3. And by God, did we maximise Pillar 3. And as I said, as a result, the government have now changed their government wages policy, because we didn't leave much left for any other union. Next slide, thanks, mate. So one of the things we'll talk about first of all is the additional weeks annual leave. So if you're currently receiving 4 weeks annual leave a year, you're going to get 5 weeks annual leave a year. And if you're a shift worker and you're currently getting 5 weeks annual leave a year, you're going to get 6 weeks annual leave a year. So that's right, it doesn't matter whether you're currently getting 4 or 5 weeks annual leave a year, you're going to get an extra week's annual leave on top of that. Now, that didn't come without that was a very significant cost to government, the extra week's annual leave, and there was a partial trade-off for helping to fund the additional week's annual leave. And what we've done is come into line with what the nurses have had for quite some time. This is what they did to get the additional week's annual leave, and this is what we've also agreed to provide you with the additional week's annual leave. So under your current agreement, if you work a public holiday, you get paid double time and a half. Under the new agreement, you will get double time. If you are a full-time employee and you're rostered off on a public holiday, at the moment, you will receive time and a half for your rostered day off. In the future, you will receive single time. And if you're a part-time employee, you have to show that you would ordinarily have worked that day of the week to have a time and a half payment for that day. And ordinarily is 50% or more occasions over the preceding 6 months. The new agreement will be you will receive a payment regardless of whether you ever work that day of the week or not, and it will be worked out on a single rate on your average hours for the week. So there's a bit of a formula that runs in the back where they average your hours over the week, and that's what you get paid for that day. Now, what we found was that fewer and fewer employees were actually getting any rostered off benefit for public holidays anyway, because the employers have been systematically replacing full-time staff with part-time staff over a long period of time. So there's more part-time employees in the workforce, and they've got to be able to prove that they would ordinarily work that day of the week. So employers are manipulating rosters to ensure people weren't ordinarily working that day of the week, or regardless of whether you're full-time or part-time, what employers were doing was providing employees with an additional day off for the public holiday. So that's not a rostered day off. You might have already had your 2 rostered days off for the week. The 3rd day off they provided you was the public holiday. It's not a rostered day off, it's an additional day, and that was at single time. So I think the public holiday payments were something that were severely under threat, and employers through Kronos and other rostering systems were able to manipulate it in such a way that fewer and fewer employees were getting paid a public holiday penalty anyway. So as I said, there was a small trade-off there to get the additional week's annual leave, but I think it's certainly well worth that small trade-off. Next slide, thanks, Jose. Long service leave, employees will be able to, as of 1 July this year, access long service leave after 9 years of service. July next year, you'll be able to access long service leave after 8 years of service, and the following year, you'll be able to access long service leave at 7 years and thereafter. The early access to long service leave, this is exactly what the nurses got in their enterprise bargaining agreement. We're able to negotiate it and replicate it in ours, is that there is a state long service leave act that accrues at a lower rate than what your agreement has historically provided for. So if you were to take long service leave between 7 and 10 years, it is at the state long service leave accrual, not the pre-modern award accrual, which is what you'd get after 10 years. So it's really for those who are wanting to access long service leave to potentially have a well-earned rest, or it might be that you want to dovetail it into some parental leave and get some long service leave payments as a result of that. Or you might be doing some study, for example, and you might want to access your long service leave after 7 years to do some clinical placements or something like that as well. So the 7 years long service leave access will be able to happen within the next 3 or 2 years. Next slide, thanks, mate. As I mentioned before, employers are replacing full-time staff as they retire or leave the industry with part-time employees. In fact, we see time and time again employers employing people at 37 hours a week just to sidestep their obligations to provide employees with an ADO. What we've been able to negotiate in this agreement is that any employee that's working 37 hours or more will be able to access an ADO. So you can request a system or a rostered system of work that provides for an ADO. That doesn't mean to say you work 7.6 hours a day and you get an ADO. No, you've got to work your 8 hours a day. 0.4 of those hours gets banked up for an ADO. So you've got to be working full time. So anyone who's currently working 37 hours a week or more, the employer within the first 3 months of this agreement will notify you of your entitlement to an ADO. You can refuse to have it. I mean, if you're got some school pickup obligations or something like that, it works for you, that's fine. But otherwise, for the likes of Mildura Hospital, who lost their ADOs back in 1998 when Ramsay's took over the running of the hospital, they'll be able to get their ADOs back finally. So that's a great outcome. I hope you look forward to getting a 3-day weekend once a month. Next slide, thanks, mate. Workload's a massive issue across the health industry, regardless of whether you're an employee covered by this agreement or you're a doctor. Everyone's under enormous workload pressures. So what the Health Workers Union, along with a number of other unions, have been doing over the last 2 years is sitting down with WorkSafe and developing guidance material for managing fatigue. It's not just a health industry fatigue guidance, it is fatigue guidance that might be for the transport industry, for example. whatever is in the guidance material, if the employers adopt that guidance, then they're considered OH&S compliant. Now, what we've done is we've embedded the WorkSafe's guidance on fatigue management into this enterprise bargaining agreement. It's a fantastic set of guidance materials, and it goes to dealing with a whole range of issues, including managing fatigue, workload, and all the rest of it. Because what's been happening historically is that you turn up to work, you find yourself as a cleaner, the only one doing 2 wards instead of a cleaner on each ward, for example, and there's an expectation that you're now working across both wards for the day. And if you raise a complaint, it's dealt with under the grievance procedure, which means that you just got to tough it up, work it out until you can sit down with your employer and work out what the issues were. That's not going to be dealt with under the grievance procedure anymore. It's going to be considered an OH&S issue, and it's going to require immediate action by the employer to address workload and fatigue. Next slide, thanks, mate. If you are an OH&S representative already, please let us know. I know we have more members as OH&S reps than what we have on our system, so let us know if you are an OH&S rep and we'll update our system. OH&S reps do tend to get more information around health and safety than the rest of our membership, so to remain in the loop, please update your details. If you are a health and safety representative and you are entitled to a 5-day basic course, and if you're in regional Victoria, we recommend Be Safe as the preferred provider. And if you're in metropolitan areas, we recommend Victorian Trades Hall Council, and both the links are there for you to go to and sign up for your 5-day basic course. But also, as a OH&S rep, you're entitled to a 1-day update every 12 months. So Be Safe and Victorian Trades Hall Council links are both there for you to sign up as an OH&S rep. And for this training, the employer must pay for your training, and they also must pay your wages or any other associated costs when it comes to training as an OH&S representative. Now, if you are an OH&S representative, there is also going to be an added bonus for you, and that is an opportunity to actually go and do what we refer to as a secondment or a department, OH&S department placement. So it's going to be at the employer's discretion, but we will be heavily encouraging the employers to establish this. And it's based on my experience. When I worked at Ballarat St John of God Hospital, I was elected as a health and safety rep within my department. And after completing a 5-day basic course, I enjoyed coming back to the workplace, talking about health and safety with my workmates, making sure that all the maintenance schedules are up to date and all the policies that help protect my workmates were all up to date and functioning, and everyone was aware of it as well. I was approached by the health and safety manager and said, how would you like to come over 1 day a fortnight and work in the health and safety department? See if you can clear it with my boss, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that. So it was arranged, and 1 day a fortnight I would go and work in the health and safety department. I wasn't the only one that was being borrowed by the health and safety manager to go and work in that department. There were other people within other classifications in the hospital also over there with a similar sort of arrangement. One of them was a chef at the hospital. Now, I wondered why this arrangement was happening at the hospital, and it took me a while to twig. We were there helping the OH&S manager, a manager that had no background in the health industry, and he was using us as a really valuable resource. He was picking our brains. We were helping him develop really good OH&S policies, and it wasn't just a one-way learning experience. He wasn't just learning from us as OH&S representatives who work in the health industry. We were also able to learn from him and watched him, how he developed his OH&S policies and how he went around doing his inspections and how he just basically did his business. When he retired, he was actually replaced by one of the OH&S representatives from the kitchen, who'd actually enrolled and gone off and done a certificate for an OH&S. So one of my dreams is to see more people from the health industry who are health and safety representatives go on and do further education and become health and safety managers one day into the future. So we've got the experts from the field managing the health and safety of those in the field. So if you are an OHS rep, there's a great opportunity for you to do a placement up in the OHS department. What you'll get paid up in the OHS department is the same rate of pay as you're not doing the OHS manager's role, so you won't be getting his rate or her rate of pay. You'll just get your normal rate of pay while you're doing that placement. Next slide, thanks, mate. That's right. None of us are getting any younger. And what's been happening is that, unfortunately, this union is seeing more and more of its members being put on performance improvement plans. And I'll use an example of a patient service assistant who may have been able to clean and make 30 beds a day, and in recent times been able to only do 15 beds a day. They get called into the office and with a please explain, and put under a performance improvement plan, and essentially forced out of the organisation. And these are employees that have probably put in many decades of work into these hospitals and healthcare networks, and it's just a terrible way to exit that employer. What we've done is we've introduced a new clause into the performance management clause. So if you, through the investigation process, have identified as having a disability, and a disability might be a short-term disability, you've got a twisted ankle or something like that, and that's why you're not able to porter the patients around the hospitals as fast as you ordinarily would, or it might be something that's worn out over time. It's a repeated stress injury. Or, as I said, we've got an ageing workforce, and this union's actually represented a couple of members over the last few years that have had early onset dementia as well. So we think that the performance improvement stuff can be better managed where someone has identified as having a disability, and instead of putting them on an improvement plan because there's no possibility of improvement, it's more about how to better manage the individual's disability. And that might mean that they do different tasks and have, under the NDIS funding the employers can access, have someone else come in and do those jobs that they can't do any longer. Or it might be that there's particular shifts that they're able to do because they're more alert in the morning than what they are in the afternoons or whatever. But the conversation is going to have to shift from how to performance improve someone where there's no capacity to improve to how can we manage this really long-term employee, as an example, to continue to make a valuable contribution to our organisation. Next slide, thanks, mate. The Workplace Trainer Careers Advisor, so under your current agreement, as of October 2018, every hospital in the state of Victoria has their share of a Workplace Trainer Careers Advisor. They are there to help you advance your career in the health industry. They've picked up a couple of additional responsibilities, though, as part of this enterprise bargaining agreement. And one is that where an employee's position has been deemed to be redundant, they're going to get involved very early on around looking at possible retraining and redeployment opportunities. And it might be even outside of the organisation. They'll look locally as to, well, where is the job growth market in this local township or suburb, for example, and can we offer some assistance with formal qualifications to enable you to transfer into those jobs. So if someone's being made redundant, the Workplace Trainer Careers Advisor is there to help you with possible retraining and redeployment, even outside of the current health provider that you're working for. The other area that they're going to get involved in is where someone has suffered a workplace injury and they're not likely to return to their pre-injury employment. The Workplace Trainer Careers Advisor will look at what you are and aren't able to do and have a discussion with you around what retraining and redeployment opportunities there might be for you to gain formal qualifications and continue your work for that organisation. As far as I'm concerned, if the organisation has broke you, they need to help fix you, and instead of just tossing you out on the scrap heap after having you sitting at home on work cover for 12 months or more. Next slide, thanks. What we've done, so you've currently got 30 EFT of Workplace Trainer Careers Advisors across the state of Victoria. So as I said before, in every hospital in Victoria, there is a Workplace Trainer Careers Advisor, and they are there simply to help you with your career path opportunities. What we've done is negotiate an additional EFT across the state of Victoria. So they're not 15 additional people as such. It might be that some hospitals have part-time positions at the moment. They will move to full-time positions. But essentially what we'll have is 45 EFT across the entire state of Victoria for workplace training and career advising for our members. Next slide, thanks, Mark. So also to help you with your career path prospects, we've negotiated improved access to study leave. For too long have we heard of situations where employees have approached their supervisor and said, look, I'm doing this study at the moment, I'm a cleaner, I've seen what the allied health assistants do in the rehab area of the hospital, and enrolled in an allied health assistant course doing a certificate 3, but I'll need to have some study leave to enable me to finish my certificate 3. Too often have we seen the employer come back with, well, no, you can't have study leave because what you're studying has absolutely nothing to do with your current role at the hospital. They won't be able to do that in the future. It'll be anything that is health related. If you're enrolled or involved in study there, you'll have access to your study leave to complete those studies. We've also opened up a flexible work arrangement clause in the enterprise bargaining agreement where it is, you can negotiate flexible work around your studies. So for example, you might have TAFE on a particular day of the week. You can say to your employer, I can't work that day of the week, but I can work these other days. I want a flexible work arrangement while I'm completing my studies, and they won't be able to unreasonably refuse that. Or it might be that you can do an evening shift, for example, but you can't do the day shifts on particular days of the week because TAFE is on in the mornings. Or it might be that you've got a clinical placement at the end of your study and you'd like to have some flexible work arrangements there to enable you to take an extended period of time off without affecting any other leave entitlements you might have, such as your long service leave, to allow you to complete those studies. The other thing that is available is that we've reimagined the multi-skilling allowance. And what we've done is we've retitled it as a education incentive allowance. And that education incentive allowance will actually be going to more classifications than previously that were receiving it. So the food and domestics and the PSAs were receiving it prior to this agreement. What it's aimed at is to those people who do not have any formal qualifications, where one of the reasons why they haven't gone on and done extra studies is because they can't afford it. So this is directly aimed at the lowest paid employees under our agreement. The allowance will be paid in 2 amounts each year. So it'll be $250 in March and $250 in September. That's to help you buy books or computers or potentially accommodation if you have to go off somewhere to do a clinical placement. This year will be a $500 amount, and that will be paid towards the end of the year. So we haven't got a set date on that yet. But the education incentive allowance there is directly aimed at those who do not have a formal qualification. Next slide, thanks, mate. Now, superannuation, the employers only have to pay your superannuation into your super account quarterly at the moment. So why are they earning interest off your hard-earned retirement? What we've done under this enterprise bargaining agreement is made the employers put your superannuation contribution into your account every 4 weeks. So you're going to be earning that valuable compounding interest, not your employer. And the other thing that we've done is, as I mentioned earlier, we've been able to demonstrate where there's inequities between men and women in the workforce, and why women retire with less in their super account than men is they're more likely to have taken parental leave than their male counterparts. What we've managed to negotiate is for super contributions to be made to, it might be a same-sex couple, but anyone taking parental leave, even the unpaid component of parental leave, is now going to attract superannuation contributions every 4 weeks. So that amount will be worked out on your preceding 12 months income. So whatever your super contributions were prior to you going off on parental leave, the employer will continue to make those payments on your behalf every 4 weeks for up to 12 months. So this will go a long way to addressing that retirement inequity between the men and women in the same job, in the same role, that is for the same employer over the same period of time. So that's a huge win for women in the workplace. Next slide, thanks, mate. We've also established an industry review panel. And the industry review panel, we do have the odd classification dispute in classifications under your stream, but it's not very often. It's usually admin workers or technicians, but we do have the odd classification dispute that pops up under your classification groups. And what we traditionally have to do is that where we can't resolve the dispute directly with the employer, we take it off to the Fair Work Commission. That can take quite some time to get a listing. And then what we do is provide purely on papers the arguments of why you should be reclassified. And the employers also do a similar process. The Fair Work Commissioner has no background in the health industry, got no clue about what you do, and makes a decision purely on the arguments and the papers presented before them. And then they'll deliberate and come back in 3 months' time. So it's good 6 months or more turnaround usually for a classification dispute. And the decision is purely based on what side of the bed the Fair Work Commissioner got out of that morning. So the industry review panel will be made up of industry experts. There will be an independent chair as well, most likely a retired commissioner who has a background in health, who may even from time to time come out and physically visit the worksite to do their own assessment about what you do in the workplace, and they will then determine whether or not you've been classified correctly or not. So that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for us to streamline and make the process much quicker. The industry review panel will be meeting monthly to hear any disputes. So that's a fantastic outcome for our members to speed up any disputes. Next slide, thanks, mate.
I know where you're coming from, a long road and the money's gone. All the games where you played your part from the very start just to come this far. You should know I believe in you. Every race you run, you're my number one. Kick it up now and bring it on. This will be your day. 'Cause baby, you were born to win. Never give up, never give in. You were born to win. Your destiny is victory. You set it up and you knock it down. You're all set now to rock this town. You don't really need to play it low. Just get up and go. This is all your show. You should know I believe in you. Every race you run, you're my number one. Kick it up now and bring it on. This will be your day. 'Cause baby, you were born to win. Never give up, never give in. You were born to win. Your destiny is victory. You were born to win.
Now, for what you've really tuned in for, you've had the general presentation. Now, the things that are specific to your classifications we'll go through. If you can go to the first slide, thanks, mate. Nausea allowance. There will be a $350 nausea allowance. It will be paid to cleaners, drivers, hospital attendants, laundry hands, patient transport officers, store persons, security guards, in the pay period containing 1 December each year. So we tried to time the nausea allowance payment to be in December, as early as we could in December, remembering that the nausea allowance is going to some of the lowest paid workers that this agreement covers, and that extra $350 just this side of Christmas might mean the difference between having a really nice Christmas turkey on the table or a present under the tree. So one pay period containing 1 December. Each year, there will be a $350 nauseous allowance, and it will be going to cleaners, drivers, hospital attendants, laundry hands, patient transport officers, store persons, and security guards. Next slide, thanks. Education incentive allowance. As I said before, this will be paid to people that have got no formal qualifications. So the education incentive allowance will be going to cleaners, car park attendants, drivers under 1.25 tonne, gardeners non-trade, handy person unqualified, store person alone with more than 3 months experience, cook grade 1, sweets cook. They will all receive the education incentive allowance. So that's, as I said, you don't have to be enrolled in a course to receive the education incentive allowance. It's to encourage you, and we encourage you to go on and do further education. So $250 in March, $250 in September. It'll be a $500 amount this year, probably closer to the end of the year. And that is to help you with any of your course costs, like your books or your computers, because a lot of the courses that are available now obviously are free through TAFE, but it is those little side costs that do stop some people from enrolling in completing further education. Next slide, thanks, mate. So the code responders. So as we know, it's not just security guards that respond to codes. It is other classifications, usually patient services assistants, but it's not always limited to patient services assistants, especially in regional areas. What tends to happen is they'll go around looking for the biggest, burliest fellow they can find in the place, and sometimes it's a gardener, and they're given code responsibilities. What's going to happen under this agreement is if you are rostered as a code responder for any given shift, you will actually be paid as a security officer grade 2 for that particular shift. So it'll be a higher duties arrangement. It won't be an allowance as such, but if you've been given the code responsibilities, you will not be paid your normal rate of pay for that particular rostered shift. You'll be getting paid as a security officer grade 2, which is, and their wages are going up quite substantially, which I'll get to in a moment. Next slide, thanks, mate. The patient transport officers, there's a few of them scooting around the state at the moment. You'll receive, where you have a certificate 3 in non-emergency patient transport, you'll receive a 3% certificate allowance, and where you have a certificate 4 in non-emergency patient transport, you will receive 4% certificate allowance, and where you might have a diploma in paramedic science, you'll receive a 5% patient transport officer allowance. So if you are a patient transport officer and you hold any of those qualifications, just be aware that you also have an entitlement to those allowances as well. Next slide, thanks, mate. Security officer certificate allowance. So where a security officer holds a relevant security qualification that exceeds that required for licensing of an unarmed guard, or where appropriate, a control room operator, a weekly certificate allowance of 4% of the security officer grade 2 rate would be payable as part-time in pro rata, obviously. Security allowance is for people, as I said, who have got a qualification beyond that of a unarmed guard, and we do have a few of them around, so there is a security officer certificate allowance there for you guys as well. Next slide, thanks, mate. Promotion of local workforce. So this is something that doesn't particularly affect you as a group, but there are the most likely use of 457 visas under our agreement, believe it or not, are the cooks and the chefs. So they'll come in under 457s. What we've got in this agreement is promotion of local workforce. And why we have 457 visas for cooks and chefs is that it's been identified as there's a shortage of skilled labour in that area. So it might be that you're a cleaner, as an example, at the moment, and you're thinking about a change in career. I could suggest that maybe you need to look at a trade cook qualifications. There are Cert 3, Cert 4 and diplomas in commercial cooking. And there's plenty of work out there for cooks and chefs, and the employers where there are opportunities to upskill people, use your workplace training careers advisor to help you gain these qualifications. They've got to employ local over top of 457 visas. So that's a fantastic outcome as well. Next slide, thanks, mate. Now, there's just been a slight change in title here for the orderly cleaner position. We tried to separate orderly and cleaner into two separate classifications, but we were unsuccessful this time around, but we will give it another crack next time. So you won't be known as an orderly cleaner in the new agreement. You'll be known as a cleaner patient transport assistant. And why we've called you a patient transport assistant is because we wanted to more clearly identify a career path opportunity for you from patient transport assistant to patient transport officer. And a patient transport assistant grade 1 is just simply an orderly cleaner at the moment with less than 3 months experience, and a cleaner patient transport assistant grade 2 is someone who's currently an orderly cleaner with more than 3 months experience. And we've just gone, the cleaner of windows, we've just reclassified that group to cleaner grade 3. So it's really just a change of title, not so much wage related, but just a change in title there for you. Next slide, thanks, Yosin. Laundry hands. Now, there are laundry hands under the new, in the existing agreement, but also laundry operators and also sorter and packer of linen. Now, what we've done is looked at the laundry hand in your current agreement. We made, after 3 months experience, you'd go up to the next wage skill level, which is where the laundry operator set. So laundry operator really, it was just a title more than anything else. It didn't mean a higher rate of pay than the laundry hand. So we've got rid of laundry operator. But we've also got rid of sorter and packer of linen as well, and just bundled you all into the one classification known as laundry hand. So sorter and packer of linen, your new title will be laundry hand grade 1 if you've got less than 3 months experience, or a grade 2 if you've got more than 3 months experience. And why the laundry, the sorter and packer of linen and the laundry hands, we're on the same rates of pay anyway, and we're looking to reduce the number of classifications covered by this agreement because we need to bring some new ones in as things have evolved with qualifications and new classifications that are coming in. Next slide, thanks. So rates of pay, this is what you've all been waiting for, I suppose, and I can't fit you all on the one page, so we're going to go through a couple of pages. But essentially what I'll do is touch on where I think we've got quite a few members out there, and there's a driver articulated, so 12 to 13 tonnes, for example. Now we know Warrigal Lynn, for example, they've got their truck drivers who are driving semi-trailers. Their wage increase will go up 24.9% over the life of the agreement. The driver over 3 tonnes is 18.8%. Gardener, let's say gardener non-trade, your wage increase will be 17.8%. And as this is a video, you guys can just push pause right now and have a look across and see exactly what your rate increases will be. But your patient transport officers, grade 3, as another really good example, is 39.6% wage increase over the life of the agreement. Security officers, we've got 30 for a security officer grade 2, 32.8%, and for a security officer grade 3, 34% wage increase over the life of the agreement. Considering the government's wages policy is 8%, I think we've done exceptionally well for these wage increases over the life of the agreement. You might say, why is the car park attendant grade 1 only getting 2.5% over the life of the agreement? That's because they're only there for a period of 3 months anyway, and then what happens is they go up to the car park attendant grade 2 and progress through, and that's a 10.6% wage increase. If you go to the next slide, thanks, mate. There's another group here of, so your cleaner, patient transport assistant grade 1s, once again, 2.5%. Why? Because they're only there for 3 months and they go up to the cleaner patient transport assistant grade 2. That's a 10.6 over the life of the agreement. The cleaners and the laundry hands, they did particularly well under the current agreement when we made the grade 1 position as an entry level, so after 3 months going up to level 2, and essentially the 10.6 is still well beyond the government's wages policy of 8%, in particular when you factor in the additional weeks annual leave, the long service leave access, the ADOs, and also the superannuation contributions, all well and truly exceed the government wages policy of 8%. Next slide, thanks, mate. As I said, you can push pause at any time because it's a video and just have a really good close look at what your rates of pay are going to be. Now, I think we've covered off on those ones on the first sheet as well. But is there another one after this one? There we go. There's the gardeners and handy persons as well. The handy person trade, for example, 35.1%, the gardener trade as well, 35.1%. They're very substantial uplifts, but these people have done apprenticeships. They've spent 3 years or 4 years doing their apprenticeship, and it's about time they got recognised for that as well. So I think this union's done exceptionally well for all classifications covered by this agreement. There are some that had been historically not getting as good a results as others, and I think the technicians have crept away from the pack, if you like, over preceding agreements, probably because they're a very, very noisy group, draw a lot of attention to themselves while you guys quietly go on and do your business. What we've done is address that this time around and say, well, you guys have been long-term members as well, and there might only be 1 or 2 of you across the state of Victoria. One of those groups that is getting a significant uplift, for example, is a printer trade. There is only a 0.8 EFT across the state of Victoria as a printer trade. So, and then they're stuck in a basement somewhere. So we're not going to see them at union meetings and that, but they've been long-term members. They're quiet and they just get on with their job. Well, we're recognising you for all your years as members now, and bringing those groups that have typically been overlooked and aligning your wages more appropriately in the agreement. So congratulations to all. Certainly the wage increases exceed what the government wages policy. I'm proud of the way our union has negotiated these agreements. And I hope you all have wonderful time spending your wage increases. Thank you very much.